This country was built on a distinctly American work ethic, but today, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, and with that, we sent away good jobs and diminished our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make a variety of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more. All made right here in the USA, from growing the cotton and adding the final touches. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs for seamsters, cutters, and factory workers in towns and cities across the United States. And it's about more than an income. Jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Com Report wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about Cliff Kingsbury and why he called this the most fun he's had in coaching. So, and just what it would, it's not so much what it would take to get him to leave Jayden Daniels, but he said it would take a lot for him to leave this kid. So that's all in the story. Go up on ESPN.com, give it a read. Also, if you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page, click on the word join, go from there. There we go. And in the off season, pretty soon, going to have I do the private Zoom sessions for the gold members, but I'm going to have one for all the members where anybody can get on there. We'll just have kind of moderated, get to ask some questions so everybody gets a chance to start doing that. So anyways, there you go. Now, today I'll be joined by ESPN's Jenna Laine talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whom she has covered for a while. So just to fill you in on this playoff game, I want to bring you more and more coverage. I will have my 5 things I think on Saturday as well, getting you ready for that first round game Sunday night. Now, just 1 or 2 little nuggets before we get to my interview with Jenna. Number 1, Marshawn Lattimore was a full participant again on Thursday. Key to know, Frank Louvu was a limited participant. I think he'll be fine. Tyler Biadasz he's been fine. He said he's going to play. So that's good news for the Commanders, especially in a game against the Todd Bowles defense. So that's some of the stuff you need to know right now. And also today, on Thursday, we presented Bobby Wagner with our Media Good Guy Award winner. Bobby's been a tremendous pro. Everything you hear about him from the players, it's been really good. But I'll just say, from our perspective, there are a lot of good players in that locker room. Terry McLaurin was a 4-time in a row winner, but and he's still very good. And there are a lot of good players to talk to. Bobby, though, there's just something different with him. He's a guy who's going to the Hall of Fame. He's as normal a guy as I've covered who is at that level. And I think it just goes a long way. Just you can talk to him just casually in the locker room about anything. He's always around. He's very insightful with things. He doesn't walk on airs. There's no arrogance about him. The dude's going to the Hall of Fame, but yet he's a normal guy. And I think that's why he's so relatable and such a good leader has been for so many years. Anyways, so he got that award. So there you go. Anyway, that's it from me. Here's my conversation with ESPN's Jenna Laine talking about the Bucs, the matchup between Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans, but also the difference in the Bucs in the run game and what they think about Jayden Daniels. You sign up for something, forget about it after the trial period ends, then you're charged month after month after month. The subscriptions are there, but you're not using them. In fact, I just learned that 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Thanks to Rocket Money, I can see all of my subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones I'm not using anymore. And now I'm saving more money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/gameon today. That's rocketmoney.com/gameon. rocketmoney.com/gameon. All right, Jenna. So the talk in Washington is how different the Commanders are from that week 1 matchup. Jaden Daniels, obviously rookie for a start. Defense is better. What is the biggest change in the Bucs since that season opener?
Oh, John, it's without a doubt the establishment of a ground game. The Bucs, 2 years prior to Liam Cohen coming to Tampa Bay in 2024, they had the league's worst rushing attack. And since the arrival of Cohen, they drafted Graham Barton in the first round. They signed Ben Bredesen as well as a left guard, and they drafted Bucky Irving, who has become this sensation for this team, a rookie sensation. They drafted him in the 4th round out of Oregon. They have just seen their run game really flourish. And it's really allowed, especially during the period of time that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were both out. They were both out for 4 games collectively. Obviously, Godwin's done for the season. They were able to get Evans back following, he said, that probably the 2nd worst hamstring injury he's ever had in his career. That allowed them to kind of stay afloat. Now, they did lose those 4 games, but nonetheless, like, they were still competitive. And, you know, even down the stretch when things weren't necessarily going right in the passing game, because if you've only got Evans, then teams are just going to key in on him. They're constantly going to shade a safety over the top of him. And so, like, during that period of time when they kind of needed some of these other wide receivers to find their footing and step up, that's when the ground game just really consistently helped them. And it helped them too, closing out games. And also, you know, there have been some times when Baker Mayfield has thrown some interceptions, and just to kind of steady him, being able to average 5 yards a carry has just been a huge help for this team.
Why is Bucky such a good runner? What makes him so good?
Well, there's a lot of things. First of all, like, I mean, he's just so elusive and he makes guys miss. You know, Tristan Wirfs also talked about the fact that, and Wirfs is a very big guy. And he's talking about, like, you know, when they're trying to pull guys on the offensive line, like, you can hide behind him. Or I should say, you can hide behind Wirfs. I should specify that. Or you can hide behind any of these offensive linemen, because Bucky Irving is such a small guy. And he is very elusive and missed tackle rate, the best in the NFL. But also what's really surprising is that a guy of his size, and when I say that he's small, I mean, I'm 5'2", and I mean, he's a little bit above eye level with me. So he's not a big guy. He does have a lot more muscle mass than I do, but he's a smaller guy, but he is tough as nails. And he's a guy that it's really impressive, the yardage after contact. A guy that is that size should not be able to remain upright. The contact balance with that guy has just been incredible. And it's been really fun to watch, like, his legend grow in Tampa and just some of the big plays that he's been able to kind of knock off, and to, like, hear the fans, the way they respond to him. And you'll hear it on Sunday night. They will start chanting, Bucky, Bucky, Bucky. You know, they were doing it pretty early. It didn't start in that Washington game, but it took a few games and they took notice of it. And again, back then he wasn't the starting guy. That was Rachaad White. He's still not even technically a starter, but he's definitely become the guy that's getting the bulk of the touches.
And what's the trickle down for Baker? Because he's had a tremendous year with 41 touchdowns, but he also throws a couple picks. So what's been the trickle down for him and the impact on his game?
Well, and he can utilize, you know, the running backs in the screen game. And, you know, I'll give you an example as well. When the game was, the Bucs had a 1-point lead. Jalen McMillan had scored a touchdown. He had scored one in week 1, but he had caught a touchdown to give them a 1-point lead, but they really needed to put this thing away. And they were at the 11-yard line, and Mike Evans was double covered. And that was the guy that everybody knew the ball was probably going to go to, because he was 5 yards away from 1,000 yards and tying Jerry Rice's 11 consecutive season streak. But instead, he flipped it out to Bucky Irving, who ran it into score. And I think that's been really big, is the fact that, you know, you can utilize those guys in the passing game. And again, when you don't have Mike Evans, and at one point they were down their top 3 receivers because McMillan had a hamstring injury. And so, you know, while you're kind of getting guys like Sterling Shepard, who was on the practice squad to start the season, while you're getting him, you know, really going, Ryan Miller, you know, Rakeem Jarrett, he's a guy from that played in your neck of the woods in Maryland. That's when you really need to be able to rely on the ground game. So it's been huge for them. And then talking to Todd Bowles about that yesterday defensively, this is a team that has really been hit hard defensively with the injuries. And just being able to run out the clock to keep the defense off the field as well has really been huge for them, especially when, like, the last thing you want is for a defense to be out on the field too long. They're giving up big plays, and then it's like, oh, they got to go back out there and have to defend a ton of grass again, right? Like, give them a little bit of a, not just a breather, but like a mental break to kind of process what just happened out on the field and kind of rework some things, making some of those in-game adjustments, which I have to say that's probably one of the biggest areas of improvement aside from the run game that this team has made this year has been their in-game adjustments, especially at the half. They've been a really good second half team.
And then with Baker, he's had, like I said, he's had a really good year, but so much of the talk about the quarterbacks has gone to other people. Baker loves to have the chips on his shoulder. What's been the reaction like in Tampa to all the talk kind of going to all these other quarterbacks and not as much maybe toward him? How does that play down there?
He loves to be counted out. And I think truly a lot of the guys in this organization, I think kind of they've been okay with that in the sense that they had that spotlight on them for so long. That was a long 3 years with Tom Brady where the expectations are so high. So when Baker came along, it kind of gave everybody a chance to just kind of relax a little bit. They kept their standards high, but they just weren't living in that fishbowl anymore. And Baker really kind of helped them fall in love with football again, because it's not that Brady was tough to be around, but just the expectations grow so high. And it's not even like Brady's own creation of that. It's the expectations that kind of surround the team. So I think that's why it's been such a fun story for people to watch here in this area is the fact that they just had all this gratitude for Brady, and then Baker comes along, he needs a home. I think a lot of people love these quarterback redemption stories, starting with what we saw with Geno Smith and now with Sam Darnold. It's been really fun to see that. And they just love his style of play, his toughness. But it's interesting because, we were talking about that yesterday, and like, he didn't even know that he had made the Pro Bowl as an alternate. Like, he had to be told that. He doesn't have a social media, and that's kind of one of the biggest changes he's had since he was with the Cleveland Browns. He talked about this yesterday. Like, he's no longer keeping receipts on things that people say about him. He's no longer checking his social media. He said, that's just no way to live. Like, my focus needs to be on the team that I'm on right now and being my absolute best for them. And I can't do that if there's all this noise. I've got to tune that out, which I thought that was some that was a lot of wisdom from him. I think that's stuff that I think we all could probably, that's some advice that we all could probably utilize, self included. So I thought that was a lot of wisdom, and it just showed a lot of growth from him. It really did. But it's been really fun to watch him this year. Just the way he's exploded in terms of what he's been able to do. I will tell you, watching, it wasn't until the Packers game this past year, towards the end of the season, when I felt like, okay, he could put a team on his back. Before that, I felt like he was a complimentary type of a quarterback, needed the defense, needed the ground game. But when I saw him go toe-to-toe with Jordan Love, and it wasn't the greatest defensive performance, and it was kind of a shootout, he was able to go toe-to-toe with him the whole game in Lambeau and have a perfect passer rating, which I know meant a lot to him because Brett Favre was his childhood idol. And now we're seeing that the offense in many ways has carried this team. I mean, that's not always ideal when you have a defensive head coach, but that's the nature of the NFL, is you have to constantly find new ways to win games over the course of a 17-game season. And then later on in the year, you're able to kind of pull from that and determine, all right, what's the best strategy to go about playing this team, because we did this before. We know we can do this. So I think that's been really fun to watch. But just the technique and the accuracy that we've seen from Mayfield. I mean, to throw 41 touchdowns this year, I think his career high prior to that was 28. I mean, that's a huge jump, and that was last year. That is a huge, huge, huge jump.
And then they lose Godwin. Godwin was really good in that first game against these guys. He's obviously a very good receiver. Jalen McMillan rises up. And I remember talking to you before the season, and you brought his name up then. So what has he shown? I mean, he's on a good streak now, but why is tell me about him and what he's shown lately.
It's interesting because I was really excited about him going into the season, because every day in camp he was making plays. But camp practices are one thing. Right. Regular season football is a whole nother thing. And also understanding what it takes to be a pro. And it's not like he wasn't part of a program in college where there are high expectations. He played at UW. He played in a national championship, but the NFL is still very different. And so I think, he had a touchdown in that first game, but then he had quite a lengthy lull. And a lot of that had to do with having a hamstring injury, but also just learning kind of what it takes to prepare and get ready for games. I think he'd be the first to tell you that. And really, it was late in the season, I think, when you could see that the only way this team was going to be able to do anything in the passing game is if somebody outside of Mike Evans stood up and really helped carry that load. And Cade Otton was that guy for a while, but you can't just rely on your tight end to do that. Like, you need multiple guys to step up and do that. And Otton is hurt right now, although there's a possibility that he comes back this week. He's been out 3 weeks with a knee injury, but just there was a light that came on in the Raiders game. And that was shortly after the bye. And when that happened, he just ran with it. And he ran with it against the Chargers. And, it's also the coaching staff, I think, learning how to best communicate with the player, expectations, the player learning how best to, okay, how can I best absorb this information? I know for him, being like really, really on top of the details, like that really matters. And, I give Mike Evans and Chris Godwin a lot of credit for helping him get to where he needed to be. With Godwin, I mean, my gosh, he was helping McMillan with a catching routine, even though I don't think his hands were ever the problem. It was a confidence issue, but, helping him, okay, you need to catch between 120 and 160 passes a day with the jugs machine. He messaged him just the other day and said, hey, these are what the expectations are in the playoffs. This is what it's going to be like. All those types of things. Mike Evans really pouring into him on what it means to just have consistent daily habits. Those things all matter. And Jalen's a very mature guy. So, he was able to absorb that. And, we're seeing the fruits of that, which has been really fun to watch. I think it's fun to watch anytime these rookies, you see that light come on for them and you just see their confidence grow.
You've had a front row seat to the Evans-Lattimore battles over the years.
Yes.
What has been your assessment of that, and what are you looking to see? Well, first of all, your assessment of that battle and what's gone on between those two.
Man, it brings me back to watching Steve Smith and Aqib Talib go at it. But this one's a little more animated. But interestingly, though, whenever Evans would get ejected from games or get, whenever one of those things would happen, one of those fights, it was always in New Orleans. In Tampa, you rarely ever saw that happen. So, I know a lot of people were talking about last week, well, Evans doesn't have to go up against Marshawn Lattimore in that season finale against the Saints to get that record, and obviously the Saints have had a decimated secondary with injuries, but everybody goes, well, at the same time, he might be playing them this next week. And lo and behold, that's what happened. So I think it's really fun to watch. I know a lot of people have said, well, you got to worry about Mike losing his cool because that was a problem for him early on in his career. I think, it's a game of passion, but you have to control that and keep it at passion. You can't let your emotions take over. And I think he's done a good job of that. I also think he's done a good job, since the early days of his career where, maybe one bad player, one bad moment, would kind of snowball for him and it would kind of be a bad day at the office. And it's not like that anymore. So we talked to Todd Bowles about that yesterday. He said he doesn't really think it's going to be a problem. And, he just thinks it's a function of two highly competitive players that, want to both make plays for their team. So it's going to be fun to watch. It always is with those two. And it's interesting as well, because I remember after that first year of them playing each other, I had actually sought out Marshawn at the Pro Bowl just to talk to him. And even just to kind of tell him like, hey, like, you should talk to Mike. Like, you guys are both here. And he didn't want to seem to have anything to do with that. So I think that it is a real rivalry. And, I can never really get any of them to say any nice things about each other. Marshawn tended to not really want to ever talk about it. And, Mike would always be polite about it and stuff. But at the same time, like, there's some bad blood there, I think.
Was he just good at getting under his skin and Evans reacting to it?
I'm not entirely sure because I think, I go back to those and like, for instance, the shove with Jameis Winston. Mike is that guy where he's gonna, he's the guy that you want to kind of have your back if you're in a brawl in a bar. And he's always going to stick up for his teammate. And I remember Jameis was getting, the first time it happened, Jameis was, and this is when Jameis was a Buccaneer. I should point that out. He was getting close to the Saints sideline and, that's when tempers flared. And I think Mike jumped in there trying to defend Jameis. And that was when all hell broke loose. But, it happens sometimes. I think we all kind of have, moments that we're not really happy about. I remember right away when that first happened, Mike was very apologetic about it. He said it was childish. You shouldn't have done it. So he's always owned that. But, I just don't think I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue because it's in Tampa. I really, even in the playoffs when everything is heightened, I just think because it's in Tampa that usually, because there's something about playing in that Superdome, especially when that Saints team would get on a roll on that turf, and then you continue over and over again to hear when the Saints go marching in, and the fans, obviously that noise that's in there, it can be deafening sometimes. I think it really does a number on your psyche.
So last thing on the Tampa Bay defense. So the one thing, like we know their run defense is very good. There
Mhm.
are issues in the secondary, injury related and all that. What's going on with their secondary is, what's your expectations for health and all that? And then why the struggles there?
Yeah, that's going to be a huge key for them this week because they haven't had Antoine Winfield Jr. for the last 4 games. He suffered a knee injury against the Raiders, and he's an all-pro safety. And now he had a little bit of some challenges earlier in the season, so he hasn't had a great year, even when he's been healthy. Although I don't know if anybody's ever truly 100% healthy, but that guy is one of the guys that makes this defense go. And he's one of those guys that gives Todd Bowles so much flexibility as a play caller. So when you don't have him patrolling the back end, it limits your ability to disguise some things and try to confuse the opposing quarterback. So between him and then also Jamel Dean, he missed this last week with not just one knee, but 2 knees, knee injuries. And so that's been a problem as well. And he also was on IR not too long ago with a hamstring injury. So that's going to be really important to try to get those guys back because behind them, especially, they've got a little more depth at safety, but cornerback, Josh Hayes has been picked on an awful lot. He is really primarily a special teams guy. He's a good gunner on special teams, but just not somebody that you want out there. You saw that against a number of opponents, including the Kansas City Chiefs, where he's getting picked on. Now, to be fair to him, I don't think I would ever want to have to line up against DeAndre Hopkins in my first ever NFL start. I can tell you that would probably be like a doomsday scenario for a lot of people. But and to his credit, he played much better in the second half this past week against the Saints, where they only gave up 3 points. But that was kind of a brutal first half in which he did surrender a touchdown. So I think it's really going to be important that they get these corners to be healthy. And then Tyke Smith, he missed the walkthrough yesterday for personal reasons. I'm not sure what those are. But he has been in and out this year with some injuries, and he's a rookie that they had a lot of high hopes for. And when he's been healthy, he's delivered. A rookie out of Georgia, 3rd-round draft pick, one of 2 third-round picks for them. When he's been out there, he's done a great job. But obviously, you need your guys to be healthy.
What's the biggest concern the Bucs have about Washington, you think? And I guess I'm assuming some of that's Jaden Daniels.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it's been fun. You just go into that locker room and just to hear guys talk about him. And it wasn't even like those expectations weren't there going into week 1. I mean, Tavierre Thomas, who has faced a lot of Lamar Jackson, told me in week 1, and he reiterated it to me yesterday, that's Lamar Jackson 2.0. Like that guy. But it's been cool to see his legend grow, like from afar, like just how good this guy is. And it wasn't like that wasn't kind of, you knew that was certainly a possibility. I mean, you saw him. It's rare that you see a guy that's that good outside the pocket, but at the same time, like you make him a pure pocket passer, like he can hit guys on the deep ball. I mean, you saw that in the preseason when you're like, whoa. And so, I mean, there's a reason why he's gotten as much attention and the accolades that he's gotten his rookie season. So guys are very aware of it. Thankfully, the league now, you do have a few guys that have similar attributes, whether it be like a Lamar Jackson, who they did face this season. They did just face Bryce Young, who has become a much better guy outside the pocket. And that's the thing is with a guy like Daniels, it's not just like, oh, him scrambling, you got to worry about. You got to worry about him moving outside the pocket. Oh, and then he's going to hit somebody for a 22-yard pass. And I think that's what makes it really a problem, for these DBs. And they were talking about that yesterday, is just how to kind of defend that. Bowles as well. Like, how do you kind of go about defending that? Because you at the same time, like you want to be able to squeeze the pocket as much as you can, but like trying to get that guy down and actually doing it are 2 different things. Right. So there's definitely going to be a lot of attention on how to try and mitigate the damage with him. And man, I don't envy Todd Bowles or his defensive staff for trying to come up with the right plan. And that was another thing Bowles told us too. You really can only put so much credence in what you see in week one because it's brand new quarterback. He hadn't seen all these blitzes throughout the league. He hadn't seen all these different ways teams are trying to attack him. And it's a copycat league. So you'll be able to draw some similarities there. But also, it was just a new coaching staff, a brand new team. You can't expect them to be, fully loaded and doing all their best stuff. Any team really, but especially a new team in week one.
Right. Jenna, thank you very much and hope you feel better. I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you.
See you Sunday.
Thank you. See ya.
Playoffs? We're talking about playoffs? You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is a key to winning in the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code KEIM, K-E-I-M. That's code KEIM for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 160 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jenna for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. Again, I'll be back on Saturday with my 5 things I think leading into the Commanders' first playoff game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Sunday night. I'll talk to you next time.